When civilians need help, they call the police. When the police need help, they call the Emergency Service Unit.
Police emergency service workers are being credited with saving a woman's life.
New York cops in full combat regalia.
CNN, there are reports of an explosion possibly.
Oh, it's been a long time since we've gotten to do that intro, and it's always great when we do it. So, as for those of you that are tuning in for the first time tonight and are tuning in specifically to this mini-series, the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, that introduction is for all the bosses that come onto the show that have been in ESU. And tonight we had a good one, and I'm looking forward to this one. And a shout out goes to Tom Silfoni, who recommended this gentleman who I'll be interviewing tonight. And welcome everybody to this episode 296 of the Mike the New Haven podcast, closing in on the 300 mark. Like I said, excited about this one. We haven't done the E-Men in a little bit, so it's time we return to it. Hello to Billy Ryan, John Costello, and John Latanzio, of course, in the chat early on, and anybody else tuning in via YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. If you haven't checked out, and Joe Maliga just popped into the chat. Hello, sir. Good to see you as always. If you haven't checked out the previous episode, 295, volume 51 of the best of the bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite Lieutenant Kevin Yost, who was a squad guy, Squad 61 from 99 to 04, and then as a lieutenant over in Squad 270 from 08 or so until he retired in 2019. Very knowledgeable man, great guy. Started his career as a police officer actually over in Queens for a year before he rolled over, but a really, really good guy to talk to. So that was a great show. I think tonight will be a great show, but as always, a couple of sponsors to go through. And the first one is my consulting company. Need advice on how to start your podcast? Frustrated with the editing process? Can't find a voiceover guy? Hi, I'm Mike Colón, and I'm here to help. I'm the owner and founder of MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company for all things media, where I can offer you consulting advice on how to get started, and once you get started, editing, as well as voiceover work, all for a very reasonable price. If you want to reach me, you can contact me at 917-781-6189 or the email that you see listed here. I'm always available, and I'm always willing to help. Again, 917-781-6189. Why go to some giant consulting firm that's going to charge you an arm and a leg when you can just come to me? If you want to be stress-free, the way to go is to call MC. MC Media Editing Services, your premier consulting company. All right, and to an actual sponsor now. He's in the chat, and you'll see his ad here, the one and only Bill Ryan. The Mike the New Haven podcast is proudly sponsored and supported by the Ryan Investigative Group. If you need an elite PI, look no further than the elite Ryan Investigative Group, which is run by retired NYPD detective Bill Ryan, a 20-year veteran of the department who served the majority of his career in the Detective Bureau, most notably in the Arson and Explosion Squad. So if you need a PI to handle anything from fraud, legal services, and anything else that you might require, contact Bill at 347-417-1610. Again, 347-417-1610. Reach him at his website or the email that you see here. Again, if you need a PI, look no further than Bill Ryan and the Ryan Investigative Group, a proud supporter and sponsor of the Mike to New Haven podcast. Special thanks to Billy for that ad, and of course, giving me the inspiration, as by all of you know by now, the announcement I made to put together a book, which I'm working on. Just sent it to a publisher. Good folks, Mad City, Life on the Edge, and the FDNY and NYPD. Hopefully have that book out soon, spring, summertime for this year. All right. With that being said, my next guest experienced a wide gamut of policing across 35 years in the NYPD, with a large portion of it spent with the men and women of the Special Operations Division, particularly the Emergency Service Unit. He rose to the rank of chief, and past stops prior to ESU include the 4-1 Precinct, the 2-5 Precinct, Patrol Bureau Manhattan, Patrol Bureau Bronx, the 4-0, the 4-4, the Outdoor Range, and finally, of course, Special Ops, as he'll talk about with me tonight. Joining me for this volume 41 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, retired Deputy Chief Rob Lukach. Chief, welcome. How are you?
Good evening, Mike. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. It's truly an honor. I really appreciate the work that you do, and giving everybody a voice. You know, it's a lot of times on the job we weren't allowed to say a thing. You know, called DCPI. You can't say anything, and I'm very honored to be here today.
Oh, it's great to have you. And, that's a good thing about retired guys. They can speak freely, so we can dive into the meat and potatoes of what was a very interesting career. But before I get to the career, first question I always ask, where did it begin for you? Where did you grow up?
Okay, so I grew up on the mean streets of Paramus, New Jersey. There was, I don't even think there was ever a crime there. It was a very quiet street. You know, the kids we'd play on the street with our bikes. We'd ride up and down. You know, the 6 o'clock whistle would blow, which was the old fire whistles back then. It would blow at 6 o'clock, so you knew you had to run home to have dinner and stuff. So it was a very quiet, very nice town. Ended up, you know, watching Emergency, playing Roy DeSoto, Johnny Gage on the streets. You know, we you know, running up and down. Either that or you're playing Army in the backyard. So it was a good gambit of things to do there, but it wasn't as exciting as, you know, growing up in the city or anything else. I ended up going to I did 3 years in public school, which was literally down the block. I would walk down. It was at the time it was Spring Valley School. You know, my mother would, you know, set you off and you'd walk down the block. It's something like I would never let my kids do today. It's like, all right, go, just, you know, we'll see you, come back later. And, you know, 8 hours later, you're walking into the house. And then I ended up going to, after third grade, my mother put me into Catholic school. So Our Lady of Visitation, ended up taking a bus and stuff, you know, you had to wear a uniform. So it was a little change, you know, it was a little more disciplined, I guess. You know, the nuns, you know, and back then, you know, they were allowed to smack you in the kneecaps. They were allowed to smack you in the knuckles if you did something wrong. And, you know, I didn't get hit often, you know, once or twice, and then you kind of fell into play. And after that, I ended up going to Paramus Catholic High School, which was kind of a really weird setup because the school was segregated. So you had boys on one side and girls on the other. And I don't know if that it was kind of weird the way they did it. You know, for whatever reason, you know, and they had the brothers would teach on one side, and the, you know, the sisters and the lay teachers would be on the other side. So, you know, once in a while, the girls were allowed at lunchtime. The girls were allowed to come over to the boys' side, but the boys were never allowed to go to the girls' side. So it was kind of weird because you really didn't get the most attractive girls coming to our side. But you kind of made do, you know. And the difference about that school, it was like a regional school, so it wasn't just Paramus. So, you know, Paramus High School, you knew everybody in town, you know, because everybody from Paramus went to that particular high school. It might have different elementary schools, but everybody went to the same high school there. So now it's a regional school, so I literally don't know a lot of people in the town. You know, it's a big town. When I become about 18, I decided I want to join the fire department. So I joined the volunteer fire department, and going there, it was Company 2. There were 4 companies there. Company 2 was an engine company, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, you know, helping people, you know, riding on the rig was fun. Ended up being an operator, so I was able to, you know, to do a pump and stuff. So that was pretty cool. And you know, now I start meeting all the other guys in my age group from around the town. So I meet guys like Bobby Olson Sr. was a great guy. He was the chief at the time of Company 2. What a benevolent type of guy. You know, he would take care of you, cared about everybody within that company. And then I met his son, you know, Bobby Olson Jr., who actually ended up coming on the NYPD, was a sergeant in Intel, did a lot of work with Galati and stuff like that. So, and then I met Kenny Ehrenberg, who's the retired chief of Paramus PD, and Rob Guidetti, who is the current chief of Paramus PD. And one day there was talk about this test in the NYPD. So I was like, I really don't want to. I'm not looking to be a cop. I think I'm more like I want to be like a fireman. I think I'm interested in the fire department. I've been doing the volunteer fire department. At that point, I was a lieutenant in the fire department. You know, they vote for officers, and I became a lieutenant, and I really enjoyed. So I said, all right, but they all said take the police department test, because if you do become a fireman, you can roll that time over. So I said, okay, you know, and there was probably 8 or 9 of us. We all went, and it was at DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx, and we all wrote in. We took the test, and you know, at that time I was working for a cable company. I was doing okay. I was like a supervisor at that point. It was UA Columbia Cable. You know, MTV had just come out, so it was a big thing. We were in making all these installations and everything else. And so we take the test, and you wait and you wait to see the results. So I scored, I think, a 90, but the way they banded it, my list number was 19,821. I
Wow.
looked at it and I said, there's no way there's no way possible that they're going to get through 19,000 people and 821 and get to me. So I kind of threw threw it off to the side. So I ended up taking the test, a civil service test for Hackensack Fire Department. And I did really well on that. I was number 3 on the list. And I actually ended up getting a call from the chief. I think it was Chief Aiello. He called me and said, "Hey, I'm going to hire you. I want you to start on such and such a day." I was ecstatic. I was like, "Okay, I'm going to be a fireman." I knew other guys in Paramus that were Hackensack firemen, and a lot of those guys ended up rolling over to FDNY anyway. But so I tell my job, the cable company, I said, "Listen, I'm going to give my 2-week notice." And they're like, "Okay, congratulations." And then I find out that when I took the test, I wasn't a Hackensack resident. So I was not eligible to become a Hackensack fireman. So
Wow.
I was like devastated. I was like, I already had told my job I was leaving. I was ecstatic about becoming a fireman. And now they told me that I'm out. So I always say, and a lot of people say, everything happens for a reason. It was a really unfortunate fire in Hackensack. It was a Ford dealership where 4 firemen ended up, the truss roof collapsed and it killed 4 firemen.
Mm.
So I don't know if fate had anything to do with not becoming that fireman and leading me, to the police department. But you look things back, and maybe sometimes you guess, or you second guess and say, "Hey, maybe that wasn't the right time for me." So I ended up I was actually, so here's the funny story. So now I take a test out in California to be a federal fireman, out on an air base. So I passed the physical, I passed everything. They call me and say, "We want you to start on such and such a date." So I said, "Okay, great." I start loading up my truck. I got my friends helping me load my car. I'm going to actually drive from New York all the way out to California. Probably would have looked like the Beverly Hillbillies, right? Everything would have been loaded on the back of the truck. So I was going to head out there. And one of the guys that was helping me load my truck, Tommy Giles, picks up the phone, and it had rung in my apartment. At that point, I had moved up to Pearl River because you needed residency for the police department, and I was looking for, the fire department. So I moved to Pearl River, and he picked up the phone. And, he said, "Hey, there's an investigator from the NYPD. They want you to start on such and such a date." So I was like, "What?" They're like, "Want you to start tomorrow?" And I already had done the mini medical and everything else. So I knew that, hey, now they're looking to pick me up. So I was hesitant to do it. And then I skipped the next day on the 28th. I was supposed to start April 28th. And then I said, "You know what? On April 29th, I said, I don't feel like driving to California, so forget about it. I'm gonna go to the NYPD." So I go, and I end up walking in that day and said, "Hey, I wasn't here yesterday." They're like, "Hey, idiot, sit down, shut up, sit over there." So okay. And now I'm in the police department. So I was like, man, that was a crazy ride, but I'm here now. And the irony of the whole thing is, like, everybody that I took the test with, none of them took the job. Like, I was the only one. I was like, what happened, man? It's like they all said, it was like that army trick where everybody says, "Who volunteers?" And everybody takes a step back, and I'm the only one standing there. So now I'm going in the NYPD, and I can remember, I think a couple of people I've spoken to about it on your show, they're reading out numbers. They're like, we're all at left rack, and that guy, I'm sure you've heard of him, Skippy.
Yeah.
So Skippy's there. He's,
What a legend.
he's got the gun. He's got his 38 hanging off the side of him. He's smoking a cigarette, telling nobody smokes in here. You want to smoke, go outside. And he's puffing on his cigarette and stuff. And I was like, man, this is crazy. So they start going down the line, and they're like, okay. Seat number 1, NYPD. Seat number 2, NYPD. Seat 3, housing. Seat 4, transit. So I'm like, while I never wanted to be like a transit cop, I give them all the credit in the world, but being down in the subways and I don't know, it wasn't for me. I probably would have taken it, but they came up to my number and they said NYPD. So I was like, all right, great. So I ended up going in to the academy, and I do fairly well in the academy. I took it serious, not that a lot of guys don't, but I'm not saying you don't have to, but you can get by. If you do certain things, you can get by. I studied. I looked to score well on every one of the tests, and actually I did. Like I was in the top 10% of the class or whatever. So I was happy. I don't think it got me anything other than a gold braid on my shoulder. But in fact, I still have that gold braid. My wife will say, "Why don't you throw that thing away?" It's probably one of the only two of the. I think they give you. I think they give you the gold braid, and they might give you they even charge you for the shield pin 50 cents. So I was like, that's the only thing the NYPD ever really gave me was the gold braid. So I got to keep it. It's a little bit of nostalgia, and I end up going to after the academy, I end up getting assigned to the 4-1 precinct. So I knew that you read the books, the 4-1 Fort Apache, you see the movie or whatever. And I was happy. It was a Bronx command, living upstate. So because I still maintained my apartment in Pearl River, so it wasn't a bad commute or whatever. And I was happy that the 4-1's it was, I guess, considered a house. I don't think it was considered a house then. It had gotten the reputation called Little House on the Prairie because everything had burned around it. And it was just like you see these big dust balls, like rolling down the street and stuff. So, but so in the 4-1, I had a good time. I ended up my first partner was Mark Cedrin, great guy. He had come out in January, so he had 3 months on me. So actually, and you know what? I jumped ahead. After coming out of the academy, went to NSU, right? So I went to NSU 9. Had 3 great sergeants, Sergeant Crean, Sergeant Safiro, Sergeant Connery, all different types of personalities, which was really good because Sergeant Safiro, he come from the 5-2, so we could find good spots and bad spots. If you wanted to make a collie, you can make a collie. You just want to relax that night, you could. Sergeant Crean was the 5-0. He was an older guy. He was more like, hey, we'll drive around, we'll take it easy, and if something happens, it happens, but we'll take it easy. And Sergeant Conroy was a crazy go-getter. I can remember going on 85, shots fired, everything. So I ended up, and I think it was one question was like the first arrest. So I ended up on a foot post, and Sergeant Conroy's the sergeant. He pulls up, and it was raining that day, and he's like, hey. I'm going to come around 7 o'clock and give you a scratch. So I said, okay, so he's basically telling me, idiot, don't stand in the rain, find a place and I'm coming back at 7 o'clock. I'll give you a scratch. So, I do that. And then, a little bit thereafter the scratch, there's a guy driving recklessly. I end up, stopping him, and why he stopped for a foot post, I don't know, but he did. I ended up, you run his name back then, and back then they didn't show you ID. Nobody had licenses or whatever. He just said, "This is my name. This is my date of birth." Okay, so I run his name. It comes up now. He comes up 5'11", so he's got suspended licenses, and he's got a warrant. So it's not the greatest first arrest in the world, but it kind of fell into my lap. So after that, I made a couple drug hollers and things like that in NSU, even though they weren't. They didn't want you making drug arrests back then. That was still in the era before, hey, the corruption and everything else. So it was don't make those arrests. But on occasion, things happen in front of you. You weren't going to not take action. So I ended up making a few of that. So and then after NSU, and also in NSU, during the middle of NSU, they changed it to FTU, which was kind of now it's field training unit instead of the neighborhood stabilization unit. So you had to get used to that. It was all right. So, but there was also the guys who were it was TOPAC, right? So these were seasoned, seasoned, I don't know how much time they had on the job or whatever, but they were in in a shoe with you, and they would take you out in the radio car, which was pretty cool. Like you were the recorder while he was, the senior cop was the operator, and you could learn. Now you'd have a sergeant in the front seat telling you, because you're a little more nervous with a sergeant and stuff. So now you're driving around with another cop. It's a little more relaxed, and the only problem was the code word for Topak became the other police are coming. Right?
That's what I was thinking about.
Yeah, that's all it was, and it was that because I can remember pulling up on the job, and I'm the recorder, so I'm not going to say anything, right? I'm brand new. I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. He would roll down the window and goes, "What's up?" And the person would tell him, "Oh, I did this. I got robbed," and then this, and he goes, "All right, well, we're not from this precinct, but." They're going to be coming in a few minutes. The 5-2 will be right here. So we're going to leave, and you stay here, and we'll go around looking for them. And of course, we never did. But that was that was their motto, and they stuck to it. Believe me, it was definitely true. And then I ended up going, like I said, to the 4-1. I ended up partnering with Mark Sedrin, a great guy, very strong go-getter. Love to make arrests. He grew up in the Bronx and stuff, so he was looking to make a lot of arrests, and we ended up exactly doing that. We made quite a few arrests, and it was weird back then because they wanted you to make 2 arrests every month. That was their goal. And they wanted you to give out 3 red lights and 10 parkers. 10 movers and 20 parkers. So all right. So if that's what they want, whatever. I did that, So the next thing I know, they're like, "Wow, you guys are really active and stuff." I'm like, "Well, okay, you're telling us what to do. I mean, we're just basically doing it. But all right, want to consider me active? I'm active." So I can remember back then. The lieutenants on the desks, they were nuts. And I think it had something to do with their schedule because they would work a week of days, a week of 4 to 12, and a week of midnights. And there were 2 guys. One guy named was Jack DiMiglio, and the other guy was Donnie Siebold. And they were both crazy lieutenants. Like I can tell you, one time, my partner Mark walked in with a GLA, and DiMiglio was on the desk, and those are the guys that had the glasses down here, right? And they wouldn't look up at you. You'd stand there, and you'd stand at the desk with the prisoner, and they would just be looking. I don't know what they were writing because I later on I became a desk officer. I could get my writing done in like 2 hours, but they were writing the whole tour. I don't know what they might have been writing a book or something, but they're writing, and then all of a sudden they look up and they go, "What do you got?" And I go, "We got a GLA stolen car." Okay, was the sergeant on the scene? That was that was his big question. So you knew that. So yeah, the sergeant was on the scene. Okay. Then he looked back down. A couple of minutes later, he looked back up. All right, who's taking the collar? So now, for some reason, my partner and I didn't discuss this. So I go, "Mark, do you want it?" Mark's like, "No, I think I got something to do." And then I look at, I was like, "All right, maybe I'll take it." And DiMiglio gets pissed. He goes, "Get out. Get out." I was like, "What? Get out of the station house and come back in." All right. So we literally marched the prisoner back outside of the 4-1 precinct. We walk back in, and he does the same stuff. He's got his glasses down here. He's writing, looks up, "What do you got?" Now he knew what we got, but he went through the whole thing again. And he goes, "Who's taking the collar?" I go, "Lou, I'm taking the collar." "Okay, now you got it right." And he gives you a piece of paper to fill out the thing. I was like, "Oh my God, this guy's crazy," But you learned to, you knew how to have everything ready to go. You don't want to play anything. So, but yeah, there were a couple. Those lieutenants were tough. I remember one time I was stationed out security, and he goes, "Go check the vouchered autos." So I had to go outside to check the cars to make sure that nobody stole them. And on occasion it would happen. All of a sudden a voucher auto would have been stolen back or whatever. So I'm checking the autos, and I come back in. He goes, "What, did you check them all?" I go, "No." I goes, "It's freezing out there. I got to go upstairs to get my jacket." He goes, No. Here, take my jacket." I go, "What?" He goes, "Take my jacket." So now I'm outside with this lieutenant jacket on. I'm like, what happens if like the duty captain comes by or somebody comes by? I'm like, that was the fastest I ever checked those cars. I said, "There's no way I'm walking around in the South Bronx with this stupid lieutenant jacket on." So, it was fun. So, but I ended up in getting SNU, right? So because they said my arrest activity was good or whatever, they wanted to put me in SNU, which was a good time. The Street Narcotics Enforcement Unit. There was a Sergeant Sean Grace. What a great guy! Like he really, he had been through a couple issues. He had usually worked in the 3-4, and he got in trouble because somebody said he lived outside of the resident counties, and they even tried almost to demote him, but they ended up moving him from the 3-4 to the 4-1, and he took over SNU, and that was a fun time because you're up on the observation points. You're watching people with binoculars. You see them, pitching to the other guys, and then you grab the buyer, and you get whatever he bought, and then you put him in the prisoner van, and then you keep going. You get 2 or 3 prisoners, buyers, and then you swoop in and grab the dealer. So it was pretty cool. I had some really good arrests. One time though, and I know you had mentioned it's a family show, so I'll keep it as clean as possible. But when you ever did the OP, there was always 2 guys, right? So there was one guy doing the observation, and there was one guy that would watch the backs to make sure nobody came up behind that officer, right? So it was really hot day, like it was sweltering hot. So for some reason, I sat down. Now, I don't know, maybe being a Jersey guy, you're not familiar with it or whatever. But when I got up, my pants were stuck to the tar on the roof. It was bad. Like I had tar all over me. I was like, this is insanity. It's like, so they already came in and got the dealer. So I said, listen, we gotta, but like the pants were sticking to my skin at this point. So I was like, this is crazy. I said, we gotta go to there was like a hardware store right on Southern Boulevard. I said, we gotta go down there. So I go down there and tell the guy, do you have anything that's take off tar? So, there's a little bit of a language gap or whatever, but, I kind of show him the pants. I said, look, the tar. So he gives me this can of it's like acetone, right? So I start, cleaning myself up, and skin and acetone, it doesn't mix, especially on the lower half of your body.
No.
So I'm in agony pain. Like I'm in the bathroom, like, this hurts so bad. Help. And the partner comes in, he goes, should I call an ambulance? I go, no way am I going to a hospital with this tar on me or anything else. So I ended up getting most of it off. And when I went back to the precinct, I like beelined it past the desk and just went upstairs and changed and threw those pants out and kind of kept that story to myself and my partner, because I was like, this is not the story I want to be telling the rest of the guys in the precinct, that I basically, tarred my rear end together. So it wasn't a good one. Then with the acetone, it didn't help. So, but to continue with SNU, we really made some good collars, and it was really it was fun. I learned a lot. I had some, first, other than grand jury appearances, there were some real trials and stuff. Real quick, it was a trial. This girl, her name was Rosa. I forget her last name, but she would come down with a huge bag of crack, like all the green tops, right? She big, and then she'd put it in the garbage pail, and then she'd start dealing to everybody. And another guy from the building would come down and would give her that, and she would do all the dealing. So she was wearing this crazy flowery shirt. It was like, really. And so I would take detailed memo book entries, right? So I wrote down, the flat purple, green, flowers, everything. So the main dealer that came down, he ends up pleading out. So he's done. She takes it to trial. Now in trial, she says that it's not her, obviously, it's a mistaken identity. So her defense attorney, and I don't know why he did this, but takes the shirt that she was wearing and takes it out and goes, is this the shirt that you described in your memo book? And is this the shirt that she's wearing? And I'm like, yeah, that looks exactly like, I don't know, I didn't mark it. It was not, we didn't take it from her. So, but yeah, that looks exactly like this shirt. And I said, I'm thinking to myself, he just really killed that case for her. Why did he even do that? Like all the jury was looking at me like, and I'm like, yeah, that's her shirt. And the poor girl, she got like 2 to 3 years. And I'm thinking, she got 2 to 3 years. And then the poor guy that was giving her all this stuff, he pleaded out the discon. So I don't know. I felt bad for her, even though, obviously she was a drug dealer or whatever, or even like a middleman drug dealer. I felt bad for her. So now I'm making a lot of overtime in SNU. I'm doing good. Like I'm enjoying it, right? So I'm a lot of money's coming in, and then so the CEO at the time, John Carroll, says, "You're making too much overtime. You got to cut back on your overtime." I says, "Well, I said that's hard, Cap, because I'm making a lot of arrests, and we programmed the arrests so that they kind of gave us a little overtime. That's what you do, right?" So he ends up saying, "All right, you're not going to cut back on your overtime and put you anti-crime." All right, I guess. I mean, I didn't apply or anything, but all right, I'll go. So now I'm in anti-crime, and back then anti-crime, obviously we fooled every perpetrator on the street because we wore army jacket, right, with with our guns underneath, and nobody knew that these 3 or 4 white guys in this unmarked Impala were cops. So it wasn't as easy as I thought it was, but we ended up making some good gun collars and stuff. Mike Jones, who was our sergeant at the time, me and him were riding together in a car, and a taxi goes by us on the other side, and the 2 guys in the taxi just completely did the 180, looked at us, because they spotted. So obviously we turned around, pulled them over, and ended up getting 3 guns out of the car and stuff. Luckily there was no shooting or anything else. But yeah, it's made quite a few gun collars. At that point in my career, I said, you know what? Let me see if I can apply to ESU, apply to narcotics, and I'll see where it goes. Because at that point, when you filled out an application, there were like three things you could apply for. I think I filled out the 2, but ESU was my top choice. When I was in the volunteer fire department, I had a lot of hazmat training. Like Stevie Meal, who was a retired sergeant from the Paramus PD, he started up the whole Paramus hazmat back then. And back then there was actually like that was right before, right after, I'm sorry, 8,000 gallon gas tanker flipped over on Route 17, and we battled that blaze for quite a few hours. And he started this hazmat group. So I had gone through a ton of hazmat training. So I said, you know what? I have fire department experience. I got hazmat training. I go, let me apply to ESU. Crickets. I didn't hear anything. Never heard of like an application. No, come down for an interview. Nothing. So narcotics says, all right, we're going to. Narcotics calls me down. I do an interview, right? Then I think I do fairly well. So, but I mean, would I have rather had ESU? Absolutely. But I think at that point, nobody got into ESU unless you had a hook at that time. So I was not even considered because I had nobody to make a phone call for me. I was like, all right. So, but in the same time, I had been studying for sergeant. So, and the only reason I had the desire to be sergeant was just because they offered the test. It's not like, I didn't say, oh, I want to be a sergeant on the job. There was everybody would say, oh, it's a boss's job. In some aspects it is. In other aspects it's not. There's plenty of ways to be. If you're a detective, I tell you, if I was a detective in ESU, I would never study. And I'm not to say that any of them shouldn't. They should, because a lot of them come back as sergeants and lieutenants. But man, I would have been happier than a pig. I would have been rolling. I would have been so happy. But so I'm studying for sergeant. I took studying for sergeant as serious as I did in when I was in the police academy. Like I literally would go to PTS, and that was the police tutorial school. Every week I'd get their tapes. On the commute back and forth to work, I would listen to the tapes. Like the tapes were like burning out because I play them so many times, and I could repeat the questions, and they were always it was Tom DeLeo and somebody else. It was George Mullen. So I ended up studying. I ended up 2 weeks before the test, I just had my two sons, Kyle and no, they're just Kyle was born, and I told my wife at the time, now my ex-wife, I told her, go away to your mother's for 2 weeks. I'm taking 2 weeks vacation before the test, and I'm going to study for 2 weeks. And she left. She was probably happy to leave, so she's like, sure, I'll go. She left, and so now every day I get up, normal time, 8 o'clock or whatever. I'd watch TV for an hour. Then I'd study from 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock, usually a patrol guide. And then I'd take an hour for lunch. And then I'd study law from 1 to 3, and then another patrol guide. And then watch the 6 o'clock news, Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune. And then I'd go back to studying legal bulletins. And I did that religiously for 2 weeks. So I ended up in one of the first groups in 93. It was provisional, just I think Kenny Corey had mentioned it. We were provisional at the time. But I was, I was happy. I made sergeant. I felt that I'd studied hard, and I think the wife eventually came back, but eventually I ended up kicking her out permanently, but she did come back.
Well, that's one way to put it.
yeah. I don't know. At the time, I wanted her to come back, but then later on, I didn't want her to come back.
Get out of here.
Get out of here now. She goes, another sergeant's test? I go, no, just get out of here. So, now I'm promoted to sergeant. They tell me I'm going to the 2-5, right? So I go to the 2-5. So I mean I know that it's 2-5s, Spanish Harlem. I figured, okay, I could assimilate pretty well there. I know the Bronx or the 4-1 I was good with, and so I go there, and it's a different atmosphere. Like every command is different, right? So I go in. It's nice. I think it was a little more laid back than I thought it would be. I thought it'd be a little busier. The good thing about that precinct was Rags was right up on the corner, so that was a bar right there. So if you wanted to stay over, you could just go to Rags and literally walk back to the precinct and go to sleep up there. It was a perfect setting. So, but the cops were good. Like they did their job. There wasn't a lot of they didn't want to make collars. Nobody wanted to make collars in the squad that I had, right? So I can remember one time we're on a job, and it was a burglary in progress. We get there, the guy who owned a bodega. It was like a taxpayer. So the guy downstairs was a bodega, and there was all these apartments above, and the apartments were vacant. And the bodega owner goes, I slept in bodega tonight because there was coming through the roof. And he goes, I heard the noise, and I see this arm with a flannel shirt, with a green flannel shirt, reach in and like start to come into the hole. So I scream and yell at him, and then he goes back up. I say, okay. So we're looking around, and this guy with a green flannel shirt starts walking down the stairs, and he wants to go past us. So I'm like. And I saw all the guys I'm with are like looking at him like, somebody got to grab that guy. I think he goes, and the bodega owners go, that's the guy, that's the shirt. I go, all right, collar him. That's a burglary, man. He's an arrest. And the cops are like to me, Sarge, we're really not sure if this is the guy. Maybe the shirt, but there could be other guys with green flannel shirts. I says, no, man, just collar the guy. And be done with it. So I mean, I thought, because I come from the 4-1 and the midnights and things like that, and I thought it'd be a little more aggressive. But the cops were good. They did their job, but it wasn't as fast paced as I was used to. Not to mention I had taken a serious pay cut, right? So I had been making good money in SNU, anti-crime. And now I get promoted to sergeant, and I've taken a serious pay cut because now I get no overtime. So I was like, I got court cases or something. Something's got to be done here. So it's not hacking it. So the opportunity comes up for me to go to. There's an opening in inspections. I at that point I didn't even know what really inspections was. I never dealt with them or anything. So I went and put an application in. I went up to the 3-4. That's where their office was. I did a interview, and they picked me up. Right. So now I realize I'm in inspections. I just went from being like an aggressive type of cop sergeant. Now I'm like pushing paper and doing investigations against cops. I'm like, I'm not really sure this is where I want to be either. But I meet a really great guy. I meet Eddie Caro. He was a sergeant at the time. We worked together on a lot of cases. Had a lot of fun. To this day, I'm still close and friends with him. He ended up retiring out of SRG2. Phenomenal guy, great family man. So I mean, it had its pluses. So and it afforded me the opportunity to study for a lieutenant, right? So because you could do so many cases so long, and there was always downtime, so you could go through the patrol guide, and obviously, when the bosses are looking at you and saying, "What are you doing?" I'm looking something up in the patrol guide to make sure it corresponds with the case that I'm reviewing. Perfect answer. I'm studying. So I end up taking the lieutenant's exam, and I did do well on that. I don't think I did as well as I wanted. I did end up trying the same thing. Studying for the 2 weeks and stuff like that. So I ended up getting promoted to lieutenant, and I end up going to the 4-0. The 4-0. Okay, now I'm back in my element. I figured that this is the Bronx. This is where I'm happy to be. Mike Shortell is the CO of the 4-0. Another great guy, really, really good guy. He ended up tragic accident. He ended up going into his. I'm not sure if you knew about it. He ends up his basement was flooded. He was off duty. His basement was flooded at home, and he ended up going down into the basement. And he ended up the water must have been charged from electrical outlets and stuff. So he ended up electrocuting himself. So tragic, and he was a phenomenal guy. Like I had known him in the 4-0, and I worked with him later on in the borough. But yeah, really phenomenal guy. So he puts me on midnights in the 4-0, which I'm happy. That again, like Kenny Corey had said, I said, "Hey, I'm a lieutenant. This is going to be great." For 2 sergeants, I put one on the desk. I go out on patrol, and the other sergeant's on patrol also. Now, I think that was in the Abner Loima thing happened, and I get put on. I changed my. I got to wear a white shirt on the desk, right? And I'm stuck, and so I'm like, now I'm on the desk officer. So now, whatever. I accepted it. You could go out on jobs, but that's only if you had 2 sergeants. So one sergeant would have to come back in. You'd have to suit up, go back out. The sergeant would stay on the desk while you're out on patrol, and vice versa. You come back. So, anyway, I did that for a while, and it was the desk was good. The cops in the 4-0 were great, phenomenal bunch of guys. The narcotics guys used to come in all the time, and they didn't bring in like 15, 20 guys, and they bring them in. They lodge them in the cells, and after they left. They didn't do the searches right or things, whatever, not as good as they should have. They end up, I always find some sort of drug paraphernalia. So now they tell me I'm gonna start getting disciplined because they keep finding drug paraphernalia in the cells. So I have this really good cop. He's like a seasoned guy. He's like, after narcotics left, he would go, "Lou, do you want me to go check the cells?" I go, "Yes, please." So he would take his broom back there and he would clean the cells. And we never had that problem again. We never found any illegal substances after the group left. So I never actually got any discipline for that. So I was happy about that. But I end up going to a meeting with Kissick and Delatorre. So they were 2 inspectors in the borough. And because I worked the midnights, I was in charge of GLAs. So the first time I go there, they crush me. They go, "What's this cluster on the map? Like there's like 6 or 7 GLAs in a certain area." I'm like, you got me. I have no idea. That was all Comstat stuff. They were trying to bring it back to the boroughs and stuff. I was like, it's 5 stolen cars. I have no idea, what you're asking me. And they're like, "Well, you got to know." And all right, so I'll now I'm gonna pay a little more attention to it, right? So now I got to go to these borough meetings every week, and I'm literally like with a pin map, pinning where all the GLAs are, seeing if they're related. And then I find in one of the desks, the guy that used to do that, he had a picture of all these recidivists, all the guys that did GLA arrests. So I said, all right. So what I'll do is I took all the pictures and I put them all together, and I photostatic copied them, and I gave them out to the cops on the midnights. I said, hey, if you see one of these guys driving around a car next to you or whatever, I mean, check it out. It's probably a stolen car. These are recidivists. So when I go to the borough meeting, they're like, I showed Delatorre and them are like, oh, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing to stop this? I said, well, this is what I did. And I showed them the sheet with the pictures and all of that. And they're like, oh, this is great. That's exactly what we want for our new position that's opening in the borough. And I'm like, oh, my man, what's going on here? I said, that's not what I didn't sign on for that. All I was doing was showing you what I did. And they're like, yeah, no, they go up to Scanlon. Scanlon was the chief of the Bronx borough at the time, and another good guy. And then go, yeah, we're picking this guy up. He's coming to work for the borough. I don't even know why I'm coming to the borough for, you know? So I get there. They go, you're gonna be the new domestic violence coordinator. I says, I don't even know. I mean, other than me yelling at the wife once in a while, I don't really know what domestic violence, is. And I'm really not interested. No, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. I said, all right, fine. So they end up having this pilot program where the 4-3, the 4-4, the first domestic violent precincts. They're getting domestic violence officers. They're going to do home visits. They're going to get a high propensity list. They're going to put this all together. It's all going to be coordinated through me. And we're going to do statistics and see how it works. So we start doing the whole thing or whatever. It becomes very successful, and not to my credit, to the cops and the sergeants in the precincts that did it. And they really took it seriously, and they went out and did it. I was able to put together the first federal domestic violence arrest. So what happens is, gun collars at the time in the Bronx, if you made a gun collar, it was likely dismissed. The ADAs and the DA, they weren't really, if there was anything like, not even the questionable, but if they didn't like exactly how the gun collar was done, they would dismiss it. So I go through all the gun collars, and I find one in the 4-6, and the gun collar, the perpetrator, he had an order of protection against him. So there was a federal law that if you did that, if you possessed the gun, all you had to do was possess it, not be convicted. He possessed it, and you were an order of protection against you, you could be charged federally. So I called this guy, Rob Berger, from the prosecutor's office, and he's like, yeah, definitely. So I call the cop in the 4-6, and I say, hey, you made a gun collar, and it was dismissed. And he goes, yeah. He gets a little nervous on the phone. I'm like, no, it's good. I said, I don't care about the dismissal, but this is what we're going to do. And he's like, oh, all right, cool. That sounds good. So we ended up getting a warrant and executing an arrest warrant for him, and collaring a guy. I think he was out in Queens or whatever. So I write a 49, and at the time I sent it down to the domestic violence unit in the chief of department's office. It was a small unit at the time because it was just being developed, and they kind of blew it off. But when Anamone read it, I'd heard Anamone was ecstatic about it. He said, this is exactly what we want. This is great. So now all of a sudden I got to present in CompStat. I didn't want to go to CompStat. I had no need for me to even be down there. So now I'm presenting on how I did this first federal crime. So all right, it was good. It was a little nerve-wracking. I'm a lieutenant there, first big time I'm down at CompStat, and I got to tell them exactly how I processed this arrest and how we went through. So that worked out fine. It got me familiar with the CompStat, and developed I guess a way to be able to communicate and talk and not be scared to go in front of the big crowd or whatever. It gave me good opportunity. So, and I was happy. They were happy. Anamone nobody yelled at me, right? So in CompStat usually get yelled at. Nobody yelled at me. So I think I walked out of there pretty happy. So then I'm in the domestic violence coordinator. New chief comes in. Timlin comes in, and Izzo, and they tell me you're going to be the new admin lieutenant of the borough. So I'm like, these are all things that I had no control of. Like I didn't volunteer for it, and I definitely don't think like I'm a big admin guy. At least I was able to, even with domestic violence here, I was able to go out and do, go out to commands, visit the precincts and stuff like that. So now I'm the admin lieutenant for the borough, which in some respects it was probably a good thing, because you get to know everything. Things that are coming from the chief of patrol's office, how to disseminate, communications and collect information, covered the wheel. And so it was a lot of work. It was good. I actually, I met my current wife there. She worked on the wheel. So it definitely turned out. And every chance I studied after that, I didn't send her away for 2 weeks. I kept her around. So, but, Now I'm the lieutenant there, and I guess I step into a little bit of trouble. Now I'm not gonna say how bad the trouble was, but there was a little bit of trouble. So Timlin calls me in, and Timlin had already conferred with the DA about my trouble. So I was a little nervous, and Timlin comes in and goes, I'm going to transfer you. I don't want you in the borough anymore. Okay, boss, no problem, whatever. He goes, pick a command. Okay, so can you give me a little time? He says, I'll pick a command, but I'm not really, I'm not familiar what command I want right now. He goes, no, take your time. So I go out, I call all the, commands, what openings they have in each of the, the commands in the Bronx. And the task force has a position for admin lieutenant. And at that point, I had already taken the captain's exam, so I was on the list. I felt I was going to eventually get promoted, so I said, you know what? Let me see if I can get the admin spot in the Bronx task force. I go back into Timlin, and he goes, "What did you pick?" I go, "How about the Bronx task force, boss? How about that?" He goes, "Nah, why don't you pick a numbered command?" I said, "Well, I mean, you didn't say that, but I will now. I will now." I says, "All right, you know what? The 4-4 is a busy house. Send me to the 4-4. I want to work. I'm not, I'm done doing all this admin stuff. Send me to the 4-4." So I go to the 4-4. I get the second platoon. Another great bunch of guys. The 4-4 was one of between all the Bronx houses were really good, but the 4-4, I tell you, you asked those cops to do something, they did it. They were phenomenal. There was no hesitation. I told them I needed verticals done because of all the burglaries going on on the day tour. They did them. Anything and everything they did. They were really, really phenomenal. So I'm happy. I'm really enjoying it. So I get a call from Steve Silks, God rest his soul.
Mhm.
He calls me and he says, I got a position for you in the outdoor range. I says, all right. He goes, it's an admin position. So it's another admin position. So I go, boss, I tell you the truth. I had been interested a while ago, but I'm in the 4-4. I'm kind of happy now. He goes, no, I need you here. I want you here. I go, boss, the other truth is I'm on the captain's list now. With the allegation that I got against me, I don't know if I'm getting promoted, but I'm on the list. So I'm hoping that I am, and I don't want to go there and then get picked up and get promoted. So he goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, it's going to happen fast. I'm going to pick you up. You come here, you work here for a little while. If you get promoted, you get promoted. I said, okay. So it doesn't happen fast. Like months go by, and all of a sudden, the teletype comes down and says I'm transferred to the outdoor range. Okay, so I'm literally like 8 names away from getting promoted to captain. So I call Silks. I go, hey, I'm like 8 names away from getting promoted to captain. He goes, oh, you're that close? I said, well, I told you that. He goes, nah, don't worry about it. So I end up going to the outdoor range, and I'm literally there for a month. And and I get promoted to captain. Everybody's like, look, everybody at the range was like messing with me, like, hey, what is wrong with you? You come here for a month and you knew you were getting promoted, guy. Would you just do this on purpose? Like, no, I listen. I had nothing to do with it. He offered the spot, and I said okay, and then I thought it was gonna happen a while ago. They're like, you're full of crap. Get out of here. So I ended up getting promoted. But just to jump back, when I was back in the borough, right? So that's when 9/11 happened. So I can remember that day. I was the admin lieutenant, and I had been going for my master's degree, right? So I had to come in early that day, and it was the cohort program that the NYPD puts out. If anybody has an opportunity to do that, you should. It's a really good program. It's through Marist College. And I'm in there. It's a Tuesday morning, and I'm in there early because I gotta leave and go down to the police academy where they would have the course, which was Kenny Corey was in that course. A lot of other guys that moved up. And I can remember hearing I had the radio on 10-10 winds, and I remember them saying a small Cessna hit one of the World Trade Center towers. And I'm like, wow, that's messed up, because, I was like, wow. So, I don't get any calls from the borough, and nobody asked for anything. And then I hear a second plane hit. I think everybody in the world knew that this is it, man. We're the game on. This is crazy. So I didn't respond down. Like, I didn't go down to the next day to help with search and recovery. But that day, I was sending people down there, which was a kind of hard thing because I'm calling every precinct and saying, give me 1 and 8, send them down there. Now you're kind of sending these. I don't, every other job you kind of know where you're going. I'm sending guys down there to I don't know what's going to happen next. It could be another plane coming in, could it be something else? But I'm sending all these guys down there. I remember the sergeant in the 4-5. She calls me up. She goes, I don't have 1 and 8. I says, I don't care where you get them and what you got to do. You got to send me 1 and 8. Take everybody out of the station house. I don't care. I don't care if you have nobody on patrol. Send 1 and 8. So, we sent 1 and 8 down there, and Timlin came in. Timlin, he goes, I'm going down. I go, I understand, boss. And I got a call from Chief of Patrol's office. Chief of Patrol says, the COs of the boroughs come down. The XOs in the boroughs should stay. Do the standalone program, right? So now every borough can stay and stand up on its own. If something else happens, the resources and everything else is in that borough. So Izzo comes in. I go, Chief, they want you to stay here. Timlin already went down. He goes, okay, no problem, Rob. I got it. So Izzo goes in. He gets suited up. He's walking out. I go, Chief, where are you going? He goes, I'm going down. I go, but Chief, they said you're supposed to stay here. And he goes, nope, I'm going down. So now I'm like, I'm holding a whole bag. Like, I got this whole borough. I'm trying to put everything together, and it's all ad hoc. Like, what the hell do I know? I knew some stuff. So calling in, getting recalls and people coming in, people showing up that were off duty that are coming in now. So I went to the roof of the 4A, and I remember this vividly. Like, you look down and you saw, such a clear day. I saw the smoke coming out of the 2 towers, and it was rough. And then you hear, it's not just, it's like everybody was missing. Like, it was from the police commissioner was missing. The chief of department's unaccounted for. It went down a whole gamut of things, and it really. It really felt bad because you knew there were a lot of guys down there that are missing now, and you had that feeling that it's not going to turn out that good, so it was a rough day. I do remember, I forget what time, it might have been like 2 a.m. leaving, and I don't know, and even coming in the next day, there was a different feeling in the city. Like, people, there was a strength of unity within the city. Like, for the first time, I can remember trying to get on the Cross Bronx Expressway and people like slowing down and waving me in. I go, there was like, everybody was like friendly, and everybody was, it was a lot of togetherness, I think. And I can remember driving, when the buses going down on the West Side Highway and people clapping for you driving by. So there was a lot of support, and and then you find out, especially the emergency service unit, and losing 14 members, that's a rough hit, and then the fire department, losing, their large amount of firefighters and stuff. So yeah, it was not it was not obviously not a good day, and subsequently years after serving within the issue during the ceremonies and stuff brought a whole new meaning to it, and I'll get into that later. But there's a lot more emotions when you're close to the families and understand the devastating effect that had on so many people. It's still to this day, you get a little choked up about it, but so now I'll go back to where I'm a lieutenant in the range. I get promoted. I end up going to the 2-3 precinct. So myself and another captain are the only two guys that go to Manhattan North. So my friend Eddie Caro, who I spoke about early, he knew Steve Bonanno, and Steve Bonanno was the captain in charge of the 2-3 precinct at the time, and he didn't have an XO. So he calls Eddie. He goes, Eddie, who should I pick? Is it this guy or is it Lukach? So Eddie, knowing me, says, no, pick Lukach. Lukach has done this. The collar guy did this, worked, whatever. So Bonanno picks me. Now, Steve Bonanno, he worked with Terry Monahan in the 3-4, a really go-getter, a great guy. So I get in the 2-3, I come in, and I can remember, I'm a new captain or whatever. So I think I have my stuff in a duffel bag or whatever. I come behind the desk. I think I show my shield to the TS operator. I come behind the desk, and I go to sign in, and the sergeant on the desk goes, "Oh, you're the new sergeant here?" And I go, no, not really. I'm the captain. I'm the XO. Oh, sorry, Cap. All right. Your office is down there. So I sign in. I go in, and there's Steve Bonanno sitting in his chair, right? So he's got all these plaques behind him. Obviously he's a pilot. He's all this. He's got all this cool stuff. So I go, hey, yeah, I think he might have been an inspector at the time. He might have already been promoted. So I go, hey, Inspector, Rob Lukach. He goes, yeah, how you doing, Rob? Good. Glad to have you. He goes, that desk over there is yours. So the desk sitting over there, there's nothing on the desk. Like, there's no paperwork, nothing on the desk. I said, all right. And so I sit at the desk, and he goes, listen, this is how it's going to work. This is how I did it with Terry Monahan. You're going to be the bad guy. I'm going to be the good guy. That's how it's going to work. We're going to play good cop, bad cop. I said, all right, guy, no problem. I'm not much of a bad guy, but whatever. I'll play the game. And he goes, okay, great. And he goes, there's a stack of papers on his desk, like this big, like it was huge. It was all 61s and stuff. So I knew that, he was a big crime fighter. So I'm sure he picks up the basket, brings it over to my desk, and goes, here, you got to go through that. I go, what? I go, this thing is huge. He goes, yeah. So now he's got nothing on his desk. He spins his chair around. He has this remote helicopter, and he starts, and the helicopter starts flying around. And I go, you know what? I think I'm going to have fun with this guy. He looks like he really enjoys what he's doing. So, we became really, really good friends. And I was really happy when he got assigned to ESU. Like I says, this is it's a good thing. He's a great guy, and and ESU deserves him. They had been through a lot. I think Ronnie Wasson was their CO, who I had known from the Bronx borough, another good guy. And I think Wasson had left, and Bonanno was going to take over. So, but Bonanno goes there. I tried to become the CO of the precinct, but at the time, it was hard to get a command. At the time, Commissioner Kelly had told people the only way you're going to get a command is if you're the only way you're going to get promoted if you have a command. So I said, well, I want a command. I'm interested in getting a command. But everybody in 1PP all wanted to get promoted, so they were getting thrown into commands to get promoted. So I got John Perno, who was in Vice, came to the 2-3, and at that time they started the 2-3 Impact, and I was in charge of the impact. So I had a great bunch of guys. I was told that there was unlimited overtime. So I told the cops that worked for me doing the impact, I go, do whatever you got to do, make whatever collars. And then that got pulled out from underneath me. The rug got pulled. I ended up going over to Gunther's office in the borough, and he's asking me, why is your overtime through the roof? And I was like, well, I was kind of told that, there was unlimited overtime. Good, yeah, there's no unlimited. Oh, sorry. There's no.
It's all right.
Sorry. He goes, there's no unlimited overtime. I said, oh, all right, it'll stop. So I stopped it, and I ended up, slowing the overtime back. I couldn't cut it completely, but I ended up going to CompStat a few times with that. And I can remember John Perno telling me, he's the CEO of the precinct, right? So he tells me, don't say anything that's going to get me called up to the podium when you're talking. I go, John, I'm in the 2-3 precinct with you. Everything I say is something to do with your precinct. So anyway, I went up there, I did my presentations. I was kind of, like I said earlier, familiar with it. So I ended up sending Bonanno my resume type of thing with all my hazmat experience and stuff like that. I ended up sending it to him. And at the time, I think Pertel might have been the CEO of SOD. And then he ended up leaving, and Charlie Camadana took over as the CEO of SOD. Bonanno had spoken to him and said, hey, I'd like to pick up some captains, because Bonanno only had 1 or 2 captains. I think it was John Durkin and I think Jin Yi, who was his XO, might have been a deputy inspector, and Barry Galfano.
Oh yeah,
so
another good guy.
He had a great team, But what it is that there wasn't enough captains to cover all the time. So Bonanno was coming in all the time on these big jobs. So he's like, he wanted to get 2 or 3 captains. So I sent him all my stuff, and he's like, hey, you still want to go? I go, yeah, I want to go. So I definitely, I wanted to go to ESU all along. I mean, that was my goal. So I ended up going to CompStat one morning for the 2-3 impact. And again, it felt like that, where you stand up and everybody takes a step back. So I'm at the podium. Everybody stepped back. In fact, even Ray Diaz, who was the borough commander, he left. He went and sat down. So I'm literally at the podium by myself. I'm going through all the numbers, and it was Gary McCarthy when he was hitting me with, why is Tuesday and Wednesdays you're not giving any summons activity? Now Tuesday and Wednesdays were those poor guys RDOs. Like, this is the impact guys. They didn't. I was like, are we for real? Like, we Tuesday and Wednesdays? I mean, so I said, no. I said, Commissioner, I'll take care of that. And then my wife had told me. My good wife, not the first one, the second one, the good one, the one I'm still with. She said, hey, look at the 4th platoon. I go, what do you mean, like 4th platoon? She goes, look at 1800 to 0200, because a lot of times, she was in PIMS in the unit, the pattern identification. So she goes, a lot of times they look at the time between 6 at night to 2. So I said, all right, let me look at that. So I have all the figures broken down into the four platoons now. The 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 6 to 2. So McCarthy goes, all right, then going through the thing, numbers. Hey, what about your 4th platoon? So I think he thinks he got me, right? So I go, all right, I got it right here, Commissioner. I read it, and I could see he was getting mad, and he was like, well, you better do something about the Tuesdays, and he went back to that, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I said, I will, Commissioner. I'll take care of it. He goes, I go, you're right. The activity's right. And he goes, yeah, I know I'm right. Now sit down. So I said, okay. And after that, they all came up to me and, hey, congratulations, you're getting transferred to ESU. So I think it was a hit. Like, they wanted to break my chops before they knew I was going to ESU. So, but at that point, I was ecstatic. I was like, I can't believe I'm going to ESU. Like, I tried as a cop to no avail. I even had asked about it when I was lieutenant, and I was told, no, I don't. The CO at the time, I think it was Pertel. He's like, I don't even pick my own lieutenants. So I said, all right. And now I'm getting it, right? So listen, I'm on the top of the world. Yeah, I couldn't be any happier. This is ESU. It doesn't get any better, man, for me. I said, this is where I've always wanted to be, and now I'm getting it. So we go there. The first thing we do, I'm with Doc. His name was John Dougherty, another captain. So the first thing, the two of us, we go see Bonanno, talk to him. And again, he was a great guy. God rest his soul. I mean, he was one of the best. And he took care of me. I mean, he forever. And we ended up going to Parks. We ended up getting the ESU uniform. So in ESU back then, you wore the blue shirt like every cop did, right? Every sergeant, every cop, lieutenant wore the blue shirt, captains, and the only difference was you had the 2 bars on the top. You got your name tag and the ESU, and on the back, the emergency service unit. So we're all dressed up, and Camadana wants to see us. So we go to see Camadana, and he's like, "Boy, you guys really got your uniforms changed fast, huh? You really go. What are you? You're not ESU men, I listen. I'm as close as I want to be, right? This is it. All right, so I'm happy. And then I get assigned to look at truck 3 and truck 4. Those are my assignment of my trucks. So again, Bronx commands. I love the Bronx. I love the guys there. That's where I met John Latanzio, great guy. Ray Morrissey, Louis Zecca. The sergeants were good. I had Mike Kenny, who I still talk to. Mike Kenny, a solid guy, helped me out with our FEMA deployment when we went to Haiti and stuff. Really, really phenomenal. The whole crew up there. Gene McCarthy up at truck 4. Evan Schwerner. I mean, I think there was also a Detective Briggs, I think, up in truck 4. Like, he had his own seat. Like, I would go in and visit, and like, you couldn't sit in that recliner. Like, that recliner is his. You can never sit there. I go, he's not working. He goes, he'll know. Don't sit there. I said, all right. I'm not going to try to ruffle any feathers here. So, Bonanno wanted me to turn out of truck 3. So, you learn the ropes, right? So you always ring the bell 3 times because you're a boss. You want to make sure that you're going to give the guys in ESU the opportunity to make sure they're presentable and they're tightened up. So not a problem. I'd ring the bell 3 times. The first time going up the stairs, I see the 3 lockers from the three guys from ESU that passed away during 9/11. So that's a hit right there. You're like, holy mackerel! Like, this brings it together now. Here's the Wally Weaver. So it's like, oh my God! Like, this is legitimate. This is like, and this is a great tribute to them, but it's real. So and that these guys that I'm going upstairs to talk to, they worked with those guys. They lived with those guys. They know those guys. So it's really heartening to, and it's humbling, So you go up and, obviously there's a lot of banter and stuff. You're joking around. And I kid around because Mike Kenny, I was sitting by the oven, just leaning back, and all the guys were at the table and they were talking. And one of the detectives, I don't know, he said something, but it probably wasn't something he should have said. Because I saw Mike Kenny kick him under the chair, and he stopped. And I go, I respect that. It's like, they don't know me right now, and I'm not gonna say anything. So you live and learn, right? So it was definitely a learning experience. Now the bad thing is that I didn't go through the specialized training school, right? They gave us this ad hoc type of training. You go for 4 or 5 days of tactics and things, all ropes. You just got familiar with ropes, which was I felt was, I felt like I got cheated. You want to go there. First of all, it helps me to understand everything that they do and what they're talking about. And then at a job, I know exactly what they're going to do. So, and if something's wrong, I can be the safety officer and say, hey, something's not right. That's not, later on, I'm able to go to a lot more training. I'm able to get ROCO. I'm able to get scuba and things like that. But I never went to the actual STS. So I don't know if I ever qualified specifically for an E-man, but I could say I'm a supervisor of E-man. And I made that, but it was close enough. Listen, like I said, I was happy. So, truck 3 was great. Truck 4 was great. I met, all of them joking around. One time they're making, it's similar to the firehouse setting, right? So they're going to make dinner, right? So if as a boss, when they make dinner, invite you to dinner, you're supposed to bring either a dessert or something like that. Truck 3, I know Roger Savage, they used to love the ice cream cakes, and they would and the pieces, they would cut a piece, like they would devour the whole cake, but the piece would be like this big, and they put it on your plate, and you had to eat it. So, but one night they're making ribs, right? So they're making these, you could smell it like cooking forever, these delicious barbecue ribs, and obviously they're good cooks in there, and they know what they're doing. So they're making these things that we all sit around the table. You take your gun belt off, you hang it up, you sit around the table. Anybody that's laying on the nog or whatever, they come, they're all sitting on the table. And he's the best right there. Truck 10's a great truck too. I do love Truck 10, and Steph is the best. I'll tell a couple of stories with Steph. He's a good man. But so we're sitting at the table. The ribs just come out, right? So they put this big bowl of ribs, and all of a sudden a pin job comes out, and they all get up and run out. Now they run out because it's a pin job, and I'm like, geez, it's a pin job, but the ribs are right here. So the captains, we didn't usually go to pin jobs, but I'm like, I can't, why am I going to sit here and watch these ribs? So I just kind of cover the ribs, and I take a ride to the pin job. And I was like, wow, these guys are really dedicated though. Now I don't know if they did it because of me, but I know Truck 3, that was not their way. They were going to every job no matter what. So I was pretty impressed. And I was even more impressed when we got back and we ate the ribs. They were really good too. So, but Steph, oh my God, what a great guy. He's a great delegate. But I used to talk to him all the time. I used to tell him, hey, this is what they're looking at, Steph. You got to talk to the guys. This is what they're going to be looking for. Certain things. If it was stupid stuff, I tell them, listen, I'm going to try to have them stop looking at this and stuff. But yeah, we work together. I mean, the rumors were Truck 10 though. They had to be careful because these were just rumors, Mike. I'm just saying rumors. So that once in a while that somebody from Truck 10, if you were sitting at their table, there's a possibility that somebody would be totally naked and come up behind you and start rubbing your shoulders. All right. So I never experienced it, Mike, but I'll tell you why. I never let anybody come up behind me while I was sitting at that table in Truck 10. So, and again, it's just rumors. I can't verify that. But another great, Mark Lanigan, who was the lieutenant of Truck 10, Steph would call me every day. Every time his birthday would come up, and say, "Hey, you got to call Lanigan." And I'd be like, "Okay." And I would call Lanigan, and he'd go, "Yes, Cap." And I go, "Hey, Mark, what's going on? I need you to have a happy birthday." And he goes, "Did Steph call you?" And I go, "He did. Steph called me." So then Steph made me. Bobby Carl was another detective that worked down at the field, and Steph had him. He made me break Bobby Carl's chops all the time. So just a great E-man, really. Truthfully, everybody out there, every man and woman that's an emergency are great E-men and women. There's unequivocally the best, top of the line. I enjoyed the work so much. So, so working in Truck 3 and Truck 4, great time. I ended up becoming also in charge of the hazmat, right? So I had to supervise the hazmat sergeants. Some of the, I think I later on became responsible for. Actually, then I ended up becoming the XO, which was a little bit of a turmoil. So Jimmy Dean was the CO of the 2-4, and then he ends up becoming the CO of ESU after Bonanno had left. Bonanno had left to go become the XO of one of the Brooklyn boroughs, and he ended up getting promoted to chief at the time. So Jimmy Dean's the CO. I knew Jimmy Dean from the 2-4, and Jin Yi, who was the XO, ended up going to the 5th precinct to be the CO there. So there was an opening for XO. Now, John Durkin had been there for a long time as a captain, and Jimmy Dean wanted Durkin. Camadana wanted me to be the XO because I had worked in the hazmat, and we had done the RNC together. We had done a lot of a lot of hazmat jobs. There was one big hazmat job at the postal office where there was a radiation leak and stuff. So I had worked with him a lot, and Camadana wanted me. Now I know Dean wasn't a fan of mine. He wanted Durkin, which I understand. And a quick story about Dean. Dean was one time in Comstat. He was in the 2-4, and I was at the Comstat with him. And he goes, all of a sudden there's banging, like loud banging, boom, 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 boom. And Commissioner McCarthy goes, well, it sounds like somebody's trying to get in. And Jimmy Dean, without hesitation, he goes, Commissioner, I can assure you, there's nobody trying to get into this meeting right now. Everybody that's in here wants to get out. And the whole place erupted. Funny guy. But so he's the CEO, but Camadana is a 2-star chief. So I get the position, right? So I get the XO, and I work with Jimmy Dean. I know he wasn't, happy that I got it, but he understood and he took it. So the first time him and I go over to see Camadana gives us a whole list of stuff to do. And he goes, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that. And Jimmy Dean says, okay. Jimmy Dean's not writing anything down. So I'm trying to take notes. And then we leave, and I go outside, and I go, Inspector, you want me to start doing any stuff? He goes, big guy, we're not doing any of it. I go, what do you mean? I said, the 2-star chief said to do it. He goes, I don't care. We're not doing any of it. I said, really? I said, okay. So he was just, he had his ways about him. He was a funny guy. And he ended up getting sick, right? So at that point, I was in charge of the field. Anything that, all the training. Franco Barbario, another great guy, really intelligent, smart guy. There was, a lot of great Murphy, James Murphy was lieutenant over there, and all these guys that Matt McCarthy, all these guys I ended up supervising. John Arrigo, there's great guys over there. So I ended up the XO, and then Jimmy Dean gets sick. He gets really deathly sick, like almost on his deathbed. And I'm in charge of ESU. So I'm over in the office with Jimmy Molloy, was the XO of SOD, and I was over there with him, and I was over there with Charlie Camadana, and we were going over something, and a job come over with a EDP. He was on a like a roll up gate. I think it might have been Queens, and I start as I'm gonna go, whatever. I start leaving, and then. The next thing we know that they tasered him, the ESU guys tasered him, and he ended up falling and hit head first, right? So he ended up passing away. And that was when Mike Piggott, a guy who, I went and knew him in the academy, a great guy, solid guy, was on the job and ordered one of the detectives to taser him. And then I spoke to Mike. I go, Mike, why did we taser him while he was up there? And he goes, well, because I thought his legs would buckle and he would fall down. There was a big crowd that was coming up behind us. And I go, all right, it sounds legit. The patrol guy clearly states that you may taser somebody on an elevated platform. It doesn't say you can't, right? So it says may. But the department, man, they crucified him. Like they I think they modified him that day and transferred him. So, very, very harsh, in my opinion. Now, Nick Marciano was the detective that tasered him. They wanted to modify him. And I says, first of all, I don't think Mike did anything wrong. He followed the patrol guide, but Nick definitely didn't, because Nick followed an order. Nick was given an order by a lieutenant to taser him, which was an allowable order. You can't modify or suspend or do anything else to him. So luckily they listened to me for that, but they still ended up, transferring Mike and to the I think it was Fleet Services, and they gave him like a desk with no phone and stuff. It was just you don't treat people like that, and then that's a good thing about ESU. ESU always took care of everybody. It takes care of each other. The ESU ambulance takes care of the retired guys and anybody, injuries, line of duty injuries. I mean, that's the ESU. That's what they do. They take care of people, and that's what you love about them the most. And then unfortunately, Mike ended up taking his life. So very tragic. That was very. It was a hard day in ESU. I remember down at the field, just watching the cops come in and pay tribute and stuff. It was sad, and it gave me a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth for the way the job treated. But I knew that I was in a good spot because I knew ESU, is still a strong place, and they would get through. And the good thing about ESU is, and more so than the department claims it, and they do for the most part, but ESU doesn't forget. They take care of the family. They go well above and beyond anything that they have to do. So so I'm the XO there. I really had a good time. I end up. So I was the acting CO at that time when because Dean was in the hospital, and they took me out of that spot. They said, "All right, we're taking you out of that spot, and we're going to keep you the XO, but you're not the acting CO." So I said, "Okay, fine." They brought in Jimmy Molloy. So Jimmy Molloy was the XO of SOD, and they moved him over. And Jimmy Molloy was a funny guy. Like he was like. When he first came in, he was all charged up. He goes, whatever Chief Camadana needs, we're going to do. We're going to turn this place around, this, that, and the other thing. And then, I don't know, probably like a couple months later, he goes, it was much easier working with Chief Camadana than it is for him. And he is asking for way too much stuff, and we're not doing it. So it turned him completely around. I go, Chief, see what this is what we've been dealing with. But I had some really great lieutenants there. Lieutenant Neil Polis, Lieutenant Pete Doman. Roger Savage was one of the detectives that was up there. Not Roger Savage, Jimmy Savage, and really some good guys that we worked up there. So whatever Camadana asked for, we were able to give. So but Jimmy Molloy, he became a solid, finally an E-man. Like he was able to see how hard everybody works in ESU, and he was a good guy. And then unfortunately, he succumbed to his 9/11 cancer also. So it was very sad seeing him. I know that when one of the Pope had came, and the Pope was at Madison Square Garden, like he was able to go there and get blessed by the Pope. But at that time, he still had his wit about him, but you could see that he wasn't. His health was very much deteriorating. So it was hard to see. It's hard to see that. The same thing with Steve Bonanno. I visited him a couple of times at the hospital, and he had good spirits, but he knew he knew, and his just started out with some small lesion on his leg, something that he overlooked at first, and that's why I tell you, I want to give a public service announcement, but you got to get your health checked every year. You got to go to WTC monitoring. I mean, it's important because you never know. Dennis Morales, who was the captain of the ESU, had a small pain in his leg. He didn't know what it was, and the next thing you know, they found cancer on his back and stuff. So I mean, it's you just never know, and there's no reason not to go. So you got to make sure you make those appointments. But so Jimmy Molloy, and I had a good time with him, so it was fun. And then a couple incidents happened, like there was a couple shootings. And usually when there's a couple things, and they're all justifiable shootings, they end up dumping the CO. So they ended up dumping Jimmy Molloy to the Detective Bureau. And I don't even, he kind of knew he was going, and I think Camadana tried to save him, but there was nothing they could do. They sent him to the Queensboro detectives. And then Giordano came, right? So Giordano was in counterterrorism. Good guy. I mean, I heard some stories about him. Like one time he had an argument with a lieutenant, and he just kicked the lieutenant out of the car and drove back to 1PP and made the lieutenant walk back to the command. But he was definitely he loved the issue. He was good. But at that point, I didn't get along real well with him, and I didn't like some of the stuff that he was doing. So I was a little bit rebellious, and a couple times he accused me of insubordination. You're being insubordinate. So I was like, all right, you know what? If we're gonna play this, I'm really not into it. So at that point, Charlie Camadana had retired, and Harry Whedon had come to SOD. Now, the first time I met Harry Whedon was when I was a captain in ESU. I went to a meeting, and Chief Espo, God rest his soul, Chief Espo was at the head of the table, and Espo says, Harry, what are we going to do about this detail? And Whedon goes, and Whedon was a 1-star, but he's telling all these 2-stars, cut your detail by 10%, cut this detail by 10%, cut your manpower by that. And I'm like, holy mackerel, who is this guy? Like, he just rolls in on the side, and he's like telling everybody, or he's like telling the people that are like a higher rank than him to cut people. Now I got to give my detail. I'm like, oh, I'm like, am I going to get my neck chopped off? So I start reading, and I see Whedon go, okay, and I'm like, all right, good, man. But I was like, man, that guy's a butcher. Like, he just came in and just cut everybody. I don't know what's going on. So now I find out he's coming to SOD. I go, oh my God, is that the guy that? Yeah, I remember him. He's like a hatchet man. I was like, I don't know what's going to go on, but turns out he was a great guy. He loved everybody. So he asked me. He goes, he doesn't have a CO, XO. So he goes, you want to meet the XO? I said, yeah, sure. So at that point, I just had gotten promoted because Giordano was a 1-star, so they could promote me to full bird. When I was a DI, I had went to Haiti, and so some of the news outlets and all of that stuff, the media, with the guys and everything else, we were on New York One, and we were all over. So there was some notoriety, and I guess they, because of the position they figured they could elevate me to inspector. So Whedon had just got there, and I got promoted to inspector. So I was like, Chief, that was great. You only been here like 2-3 weeks. You already got me promoted. And I said, this is working out. So he calls me and goes, you want to be my XO? He goes, I don't have an XO. I said, all right, because I figured I didn't want to leave the issue. I mean, really, it was my love, but I figured, all right, I still have my hands in it. I still can make sure everybody's okay. And now I get to help these other units. So I get cover aviation, right? So at that point, Joe Gallucci was the CO, and then Jimmy Cohn, a phenomenal guy, man. Just really intelligent guy. He very helpful. I mean, he military guy. He knew everything about helicopters, and he really turned that place around with new helicopters and things like that. Harbor was Dave Driscoll, and then ended up Anthony Russo. Anthony Russo, a great guy. Another, so. We ended up getting SRG. So first we covered some of the task forces. Then it was with Anthony Raganella. Then he left, and then we got Steve Hughes and Johnny Diadamo. Another guy. I fell in love with SRG because they a great stepping stone for SRG to go to ESU. They're playing with heavy weapons. They're supporting exterior perimeters and stuff like that when ESU is doing some interior work. So it was an asset. It was like a force multiplier having SRG, and those guys really helped. And mounted Barry Gelman. So was able to really now I got the whole picture, right? So I had ridden horses when I was younger. I actually had got a couple of I think I scored second place in one of the shows and stuff, so I knew some stuff about horses. Boats, I've been on a boat, but helicopter I knew nothing about. So you try to learn things, but there's so much, so I kind of stuck to my guns and watched the issue. The big jobs we would go out, the big jobs we would get called in on. So I really still felt part of the team there with ESU, and helping with the other commands. So it was still fun. I still enjoyed it, and then I got promoted to deputy chief, which then now I'm super, like, on cloud nine. You know, I got to be in the best position in the police department because Chief Whedon's he's my CO, great guy. If anything really happens bad, they're not going to kill me. They're going to kill him, right? So I got protection. I got protection that way on the upper end. Beyond on the now I got, you know, so if I go to a job, I got Chief Giordano, right? So Vinny Giordano, he's the same rank as me, so they're not going to kill me, right? Because we're the same rank. So I can go to the job. I can make these, you know, these cool calls and stuff, and probably not feel any heat. But I still went to all of them. I still. It was funny because, you know, I lived all the way up, at that point I lived all the way upstate in Orange County, right? So it was literally and then listen, they gave me a car and they paid for my gas and tolls. So I got it, you know, I shouldn't complain. So 2-hour ride, but it's a long ride. And I'm driving in and I would always hear, like, if there was a job on the way in, I would be like, Central, show me responding to that job. SOD2, show me responding. And all the guys would be crack up when I get there, because they'd be like, yeah, you wouldn't have gone to this job if you were out at Floyd Bennett Field. You only came because you're on the way in, and then you could start the clock on the way in. Then I go, yeah, you're right. So that's true. But yeah, no, I had a great time. And then in SOD, I met some really good guys like Lieutenant Brian Karashka. He runs SOD. Whoever you put there, it doesn't matter. He runs it. Frank Mazzacci, another great guy. You know, he's the personnel officer. He knows every name. Like I'll go, Frank, hey, I want to get, you know, make sure we get this guy an interview. Oh yeah, I know that guy, but you know where he's from. I said, wow, that's amazing. You know, Rich Collegio was my driver when I was in SOD. But prior to him, I had two drivers. I had Louis Zecca and Ray Morrissey. You know, they were both assigned to WMD at 107th Street, so they would drive me when I had the duty and stuff. I remember one time driving with Louis Zecca. There was a big job. I was supposed to go to a meeting at 1PP, but there was a big job, so we were on the way to the job. And usually, what I would do is I would be in my, you know, regular duty pants and shirt or whatever, and ESU jacket if it was cold or whatever. And then when I had to go to 1PP, I would change in the dress uniform because when you went down to those meetings, you were supposed to be in dress uniform. So I'm in my regular uniform, my regular patrol uniform. The job comes in, we go to the job. The job ends fairly quickly, so I'm able to go to 1PP for the meeting. So I'm changing in the car. Like I'm literally changing, you know, my pants. I'm putting on my dress uniform, and you know, Louis going fast, you know, because he wants to get me to the meeting on time. And I go, Louis, I'd rather be late than you and I get into an accident with these pants around my ankles. Nobody's gonna believe that I was changing in uniform and you were just driving. I said, just drive slow. So it was crazy, and he was like, "Hey, you know what? He goes, you make sense. I want to slow down. I don't have to deal with that either." I go, exactly. So yeah, no, it was a great experience, and you know, I miss the guys, you know, because you know you always, you know, you see I stay in touch with a lot of them on Facebook and stuff, you know, but yeah, it was a phenomenal time, and I really enjoyed it. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better career the way that I had went through, you know. So, and you know, and like just to touch base with Steve Bonanno, that man afforded me the opportunity that I would never have gotten, and I'm so thankful, and I really, you know, whenever I hear his name, you know, it hurts because I miss him. You know, he's a good friend. Like he had come to my 50th birthday party and stuff. I mean, he was a great guy. You know, he was one of the best. You know, so I guess that's the sad part. You know, you see people, unfortunately, you know, they get sick and stuff. And but you know, I'm happy that when you see guys that are retired and they're living a good life. You know, you gotta enjoy it, you know, because you just never know, and you gotta make it count, you know. So, and like I said in the beginning, everything happens for a reason. So don't be down on yourself because you didn't get a position. Don't be down on yourself because you didn't get promoted and somebody else did. Everything happens for a reason, and your time will come, you know. So, but if I could just jump back to two crazy jobs, my first two jobs in ESU, one was the Tiger up in Harlem. So that I'm sure that story's been told, but that they go that night, earlier in that night, they some guy gets bit, right? So the doctor knows he's not bit by a dog or anything. Obviously, the bite is bad. So the doctor notifies the police. They send ESU under with Jin Yi. I know they cut a hole in the door and they look, you know, and they don't see anything. So I know Jin Yi tells them to go down to a Chinese store and a Chinese food store and get a full chicken. So they get a full chicken. They take the chicken and they throw it in the door, and they look and they wait, and no lion shows up. And they go, there's no lion in there. That's it. We're going home. So they go home. Now, I'm brand new captain, right? I don't know. So I'm coming in for the day duty. Bonanno calls me and goes, "Hey, meet me at this location. You know, there's a big job going on." So I said, "Okay." I go to the job and they tell me that there's a tiger in the apartment. I go, "No way, man." So we go upstairs and the apartment, you could smell it. It stinks, smells like urine and stuff. It's really like it's bad. And all of a sudden you hear like a lion, he roars, like, and it was in a housing development, the whole building shook. I'm like, my God, it sounds huge, you know. So ESU, they, you know, popping holes, looking at, you know, trying to get into from different apartments, looking in, and they come up, they devise a plan, you know. I give that their planning was phenomenal. I mean, they're going to lower Duffy down from the outside on a rope with a tranquilizer gun, and they figured out the dart, how much they're going to cut a set they're going to put in there, and they decide they have enough for this. They work with the Parks Department, so, and I give Marty Duffy a huge hand. I mean, it's crazy. They're going to lower him on the side. He's going to go next to a window. So I'm talking to Gene McCarthy, who's the sergeant in Truck 4, and I think it was Joanne Jaffe. She was a chief of housing. She goes, "You can't lower him on that side unless you put a airbag down there." And they were like, "Well, we don't usually, you know, you're going to lower somebody, you have a safety line on them. You don't usually put airbag down there because failure two ropes, highly unlikely, and that's just not what we do." And then Gene McCarthy is like, he goes, "And Chief, you realize that if that lion or tiger jumps out of the window and lands in the airbag, now we have a lion out on 7th Avenue running up and down." And I go, "Gene," later on I said, "Gene, that was the best explanation I ever heard. Like, I didn't even think about that." And although, you know, she agreed, I think she kind of felt, you know, a little bad about it, but I was like, you know, that's a great thing. So yeah, then Marty Duffy shoots it. That thing lets off the biggest roar in the world. And Taru, this is what they tell me. Taru has a camera. They're looking, and they're saying the lion's still standing. He's not. He didn't fall. He didn't go down. Lion, tiger, whatever it is, doesn't fall down. Right? Okay. So the tiger is still keep going, and the guy from the Parks Department goes, "With that much set, that tiger should have been dropped on the ground." And then Taru goes, "Oh, we were looking at a picture on the wall of a tiger. We made a total mistake. Now we found the tiger. Yeah, the tiger's laying down." So now we're like, "Well, but how much time was the tiger laying down? How long before the set wears off?" So like, all right, so we make entry, and I'm like, I'm in the stack, you know, and we go in, and it smells bad, you know, it's really bad. He's got alligator pits, snake pits. I mean, it was like you're at the Bronx Zoo, you know. It was really bad. It was crazy. And then they find the tiger, and they drag him out, and they put him on I don't know if it was some sort of, I think the parks had something you could roll, so they put him on it, and they're giving him oxygen and stuff. And I get in the elevator, and I didn't know this, but now they put the tiger on the elevator, and I got Gene McCarthy with me, and they have a shotgun pointed at him, and I'm like, "Well, what are we gonna do here?" He's like, just explained to me, because we're going down the elevator. He goes, well, if the tiger wakes up in the elevator, we're going to have to shoot him. I'm like, well, somebody could have told me that before they closed the doors, because I don't know if I necessarily would have taken the elevator with you guys. So, but luckily they bring him down. He stays tranquilized, and they put him on a truck and they take him away. And I go, like, this was one of the first big jobs that I've been on ESU. I said, man, this is crazy. Like you're literally like, you're going to see some crazy stuff, you know. And there was another job where in the Bronx also, where a guy, he shot through the door like 150 rounds. And the guys in the ESU were phenomenal. I mean, they put up ballistic blankets, they held up bunkers, you know, rounds are coming through. I think even Chief Espo got hit in the hand with a ricochet and stuff. So, I mean, it was just crazy work. But I think when that guy ended up, at the whole time, he had his grandmother in the apartment. Like, he was holding her hostage while he's shooting the door. Yeah. And they end up lowering a bucket, and he ends up putting the guns in there. And, yeah, he ends up surrendering. I don't know if he had run out of ammo or whatever, but there's some crazy jobs, you know. But one other job that was really crazy is that we were going in with the bomb squad. This was also in the Bronx. There was somebody that was like going to make bombs in their house, and they had all this. I think it's the explosive stuff, TAPT. I think it is. I forget what it was, but it's highly explosive. It was refrigerated, and this was all from intel that they had gathered. So we had gone in. It took us a long time to breach the door, like it was super fortified. And they ended up going in, and there was like 4 or 5 guys in there. And one guy, I hear one of the guys in rear security say he's throwing stuff out the rear window. He was literally throwing grenades. I mean, they still had the pins in them, but they're throwing grenades out the window. I guess he didn't want to get caught in his room with anything. But I was like, this is total craziness, you know. But the guys in ESU, the girls in ESU, not afraid, man. They'll do anything. And I used to always tell everybody, you know, a new captain came in or whatever. It's not my job to stop ESU to go in, but it was just my job to protect them, to make sure they went in at the right time, you know, because they will go through a brick wall for you. They will do anything they can, and they will fix that job, you know. And I can't tell you how many times big bosses would thank me, and I go, listen, it's not me. Don't thank me. It's the men and women that did it, you know. And one of the great things about ESU is after the job is over, everybody would get behind the truck and do a quick hot wash. What went right, what went wrong, and then it was always a big handshake. You know, I tell you that, you know, you thank everybody for doing a good job, and you make sure that they understood that they're very well appreciated, and there's no better unit in the NYPD. They get the job done. You know, there was somebody years ago told me, this is how it works. He goes, if I'm the issue guy there and there's a job that I've never seen and never done before, I tell the cop or sergeant, I go, oh, I'll be right back. I'm going to go get some equipment from the REP. I'll be right back. He goes down to the REP. He gets on the phone. He calls the senior ESU guy and say, hey, I got this job. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. What should I do? And the senior guy will tell him, do this, do this, do this. Okay, good. He comes up and goes, okay, I'm going to handle the job now. So that's it. The job gets done. It's a great amount of resource. You know, it's just really, I can't say enough about them. You know, everybody in SOD, they all do a phenomenal work. You know, from the helicopter pilots that are, you know, lowering, having ESU guys rappel out of the helicopter, dropping off scuba divers, to the harbor team, you know, making rescues, the mountain guys. SRG, of course, you know, it's a fun unit. It's a great unit. I still think it's one of the best units in the world. So, I know. I think I rambled on a lot there, Mike. I'm sorry, but
it's all good.
I just love the guys. You know, I love the guys and gals, and I really had so much fun. I mean, that was the biggest thing is the laughter. You know, you know, when it's serious, it's serious. You know, I can remember on a job, always ESU. I was the duty chief the day. I was in SOD, but I had the citywide duty. So I show up on the job, and I didn't have any of the SOD. I had my regular, 8-point hat, right? So I go up to the floor, and the issue guys are trying to talk. So I'm asking some of the patrol guys, "What did you do?" And Mike McKenna from Truck 9 turns around and goes, "Hey, shut up!" Right? But that's, and you know what? I had known that. Like, I know, and I shouldn't have been talking on that floor. Like, they're trying to hear what's going on in the apartment. They're trying to talk to the guy behind the door. And our voices just keep, as you start talking, you escalate and escalate, and it keeps going up. So I knew, and I didn't take anything about it. And then Mike comes back and he goes, "Oh," and he goes, "I didn't know it was you, Chief. I thought it was somebody else." It's like, "Mike, don't have to explain. I understand. Like, don't explain it to me. I shouldn't have been talking, and I understand that. That's why." We send people to the floor below. ESU, keep the floor, everybody else downstairs, because guys would end up talking, picking up their phone. ESU has work to do. They know what they got to do, and they do it flawlessly, and I can't say enough. So I'm sorry I rambled on for quite.
No, I think I talked I think I said like 10 words tonight, but Steve in the chat, he's saying, "Mike, you didn't have to ask any questions," and I didn't, because I was more than happy when I have guests like this, or as you and I were talking about off the air, Chief Tracy from my FDNY series, when I could just sit back and do this, essentially, which is what I did tonight, and the guest is carrying the show. That's fine by me. I didn't have to ask a freaking thing. So thank you. Made my job really easy. I appreciate that.
No
we could go into the rapid fire now. This has been wonderful. Actually, before I get into the rapid fire, let me catch up on some hellos from the guys. I mentioned Latanzio. You saw Stefanakis. I got to scroll up some more. Steve Wren says hi as well. He's watching tonight. Joe Jarden, who's a chief in the FDNY currently, says hello.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Good man, Joe. And John Scrivani saying hello as well, as is Franco Barbario. So they're all watching tonight. And they send their utmost regards. Tom Smith, shout out to you, brother. Retired out of the Joint Terrorism Task Force. And anybody else that I missed, I'm sorry. Oh, Kenny Bowen. Kenny Bowen's watching tonight as well. And he says his regards too. All right, so the rapid fire, the show. It's 5 hit and run questions from me, 5 hit and run answers from you. We'll go quickly. First, funniest call you ever responded to. You kind of talked about it with Tiger Job, which is pretty funny. But besides that, it doesn't even have to be ESU. From any time in your career,
right.
Funniest call you went to.
So the one job I had where I cracked up, I couldn't stop from laughing. I was a cop in the 4-1, and it was a missing. And we go into the house, and it was a young man was missing. So my partner's there. We're interviewing the family, and I'm filling out the missing persons report. And I get to this. I'm asking all the questions, going down the line. And the one question is he circumcised? Now, I couldn't ask the question. I started cracking up, and it was so stupid of me, but I was just, how do I ask the mother of this missing child if he's circumcised? I says, this is insanity. And I couldn't hold. I had to give the paper to my partner, and I walked out. It was a stupid job, but it was just something that I couldn't stop from laughing. And I tried to do it, So yeah, no, that was just insanity that day. I don't know why. When you get caught in that laughter, you just can't stop.
That would have been me.
That was it. Oh, I mean, I understand the reason now. Why? Because for identification purposes later on, obviously it helps. But I don't know. I don't think I ever asked that question again. I think I overpassed it every time I had to fill out a missing persons report. So, but yeah, that was one. So, but there were many. There were many.
I'm just picturing it. Officer, my son's missing. Ma'am, calm down. Question: does he have any foreskin?
That's it. This is important. I'm trying to fill this paperwork out.
We have pressing things to get here. To get to here.
I'm not going to find him unless I ask this question.
Oh boy. All right. Well, that makes sense. But anyway, second most uplifting call you ever responded to.
Well, I tell you the truth. I think every job I've been on with ESU has been uplifting, because whether it's not a barricade and you take an individual into custody, they voluntarily surrender, or you go in there and bring somebody out that needs help, to people that have held the child hostage. We've had ones that are little babies they're holding hostage, and ESU is able to talk that individual and then get the baby out. I mean, those are all uplifting jobs. I mean, I can't say enough. Every job I've been with ESU, their jobs have been uplifting. So
absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to tweak your third question a little bit because you answered it earlier in regards to your aspirations originally to go into the fire service. Besides the fire service, what other career could you have seen yourself outside of the NYPD if you ever became a cop pursuing and enjoying?
Well, I mean, I know I was also an EMT, so I had aspirations maybe to be a paramedic at that point. But where I had done stuff work with the cable company, and I had a huge, and I still do. I have a huge interest in electrical work. So probably might have been something in one of the trades and stuff like that. Something where you could still go. I wasn't ever like a big desk guy where I would stay in one position all the time. I like to move around. So I probably would have been like some of maybe one of the trades where I would be able to go to different locations and do that. So
Yep, sounds good. All right, you kind of answered this question earlier too with the command that you were at, where the bar's right down the street. But besides that place, other favorite bars or restaurants in New York City?
so I love Patrici's in Sheepshead Bay on Emmett Avenue. I don't know if you ever been there, but it's
I
like
have not.
no, you got to go because you know why? You got to go with a bunch of people. So a lot of times we would have the SOD Christmas parties there, and just SOD supervisor dinners. What it is basically you pay $49, and it's as much food. They keep bringing you food and different entrees and different appetizers, and then they bring you there's buckets of beer and bottles of wine on the table as much as you can drink. So the thing with that is though is that um, somebody always talks to the manager there, and one of the guys at the table will go up to the manager and say, "Hey, um, it's this guy's birthday." It's not their birthday, right? So, but then all of a sudden, the whole place bursts into like a birthday song, and they start swinging towels around and everything else, and they all start walking around, and you don't know if you're the guy getting the hit or the guy next to you is getting the hit, but somebody at your table is getting the hit. So it's just a fun place. For food, I mean, I'm a big Cat's Deli guy. I love
Classic.
their pastrami, man. I,
Mhm.
I love it, and then, I don't know, years ago it was off limits. You couldn't go there and whatever. But you know what? It was one of the. I still, when I have a chance with the city and the kids and stuff, and my wife, that's where we go. We love that place. So.
And the last question of the rapid fire and of the show is, what advice, based off your 35 years of experience, would you give any new officers coming on the job now? And there's a new academy class actually going through as we speak.
Okay, so I always, I mean, it's a little cliche, but you got two eyes, two ears, and one mouth for a reason, right? So wherever you go, look at what's going on, listen to what's going on, and I don't want to hear how good you are or what you did. You can show me that later on, but listen to what people have to tell you. Learn from what people show you, and find yourself a good mentor, right? So if you can find a senior guy that's been through it, that understands it, learn from that guy, gal, and and work your career that way. The other thing is don't take it for granted your job, and don't wish it away. Like it goes really fast. Like I could tell you, 35 years is like it was like lightning. And the next thing you know, it's fast. So and you'd wish it. Oh, I wish today was my RDO. I wish the sergeant's exam was coming up. I wish this. I wish that. Now, enjoy the moment. There's so much left, and there's so much fun to do on this job. You got to do it. And finally, protect yourself and protect your partner. Extremely important. Always watch each other's back, and you know what? Even off duty, watch each other's back. Keep in touch because the friendships and the people you meet will remain for your lifetime. They are, if you're not your first family, they are definitely your second family, and you gotta keep them close.
Sounds good. Thank you, Chief. Stick around. We'll talk off the air, so don't go anywhere just yet. Before I give my goodbyes and shout outs to the audience, any shout outs to anyone or anything that you would like to give?
Well, first, I'd like to shout out to you, Mike. Like I said, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. And I know that all the interviews you're doing, and I've watched a lot of them. They're really good, and it gives an insight to a lot of things. Like truthfully, I had no idea what the squads even did until a couple shows ago. So in the FDNY, but now I understand their position. So. Um, But and a shout out to my family, my wife, my kids, my two stepsons, Andrew and Aiden, my son Kyle, who's a cop down in Texas. My son Tyler lives in Texas. My wife and my two daughters here, Adina and Annalise. It's important to have family. My daughter taught me a good lesson this recent New Year's. She wanted to go to a friend's house, and I go, her name's Annalise. I go, Annalise, no, stay home. I want you to be home. I'm here. She goes, Dad, I don't know how many New Year's Eve you weren't here. Now you want me to be here. And it hit me hard. I was like, wow, you're right. So the more time you can spend with your family and understand them and love them, it's important too. They're extremely important, so that's my advice to everybody. So
All right. Well, 2 hours flew on by. Like I said, stick around. We'll talk off the air. Thanks to everybody tuning in tonight. I'll shout you out in length in a second. Coming up next on the Mike the New Haven podcast, he was a lieutenant in hazmat, had a lot of different stops across a distinguished and decorated 21-year career, but he was in hazmat for the longest time, 94 until his retirement in 2002. He stays active in the private sector with HazFast 343 Inc., and that's Lieutenant Stan Ryback, who will be here for volume 52 of the Best of the Bravest interviews with the FDNY's elite. And then after that, we're sticking around with the Bravest because in all likelihood, I'm going to confirm it, but it should be Chief Donald Haid, who was also a former squad commander. He had Squad 1 in Brooklyn from 1994 until he made chief in the summer of 2000, I believe. So 2 fire department shows coming up. And a new show, actually, Kristen Shaughnessy, formerly of New York One. She was an anchor there forever, I think over 25 years, as a matter of fact, maybe even 30. She'll be here for episode 299. So interesting shows on the march to 300. Don't have a guest for it yet, but we'll see what happens. In the meantime, thank you to everybody that tuned in tonight via YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter. Love you all. I'm not shouting you out by name because, as I say before, I don't want to miss anybody. Then I'd feel bad. But thank you very much for tuning in. Like I said, I appreciate the support as always. And on behalf of Deputy Chief Rob Lukach, this has been Volume 41 of the E-Men inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit. I'm Mike Colón. We'll see you next time. And as the E-Men like to say, anytime, baby. Take care.
Thanks.